10 magic cards rated day number 232. I don't know what accent that was. I think in order to not like offend anybody, period, like you should just make up your own accent. Which I think it started French and then ended up like sort of Italian influence. I don't know where I was going with any of that. But let's look at the first card of the... Is it like Creole? What am I doing? Let's move on. It's Bane of Progress. Let's get out of whatever weird zone I'm in. This is the first card of the day, and it is ridiculous. This is originally printed in Commander 2013. It costs 6 mana. You might think that's a lot, but just hear me out. 4 and 2 green for a 2/2 elemental. When it ETBs, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Put a +1/+1 counter on Bane of Progress for each permanent destroyed this way. This card costs $7 at its lowest price point. So just keep that in mind. And that's because it does that thing that I said. It does, did you catch that? It casts Tranquility and Shatterstorm. In case you need context, it destroys all artifacts and enchantments, which is nuts. It is nuts. You probably don't want too many arts or enchantments of your own. So, I don't think it's going to stop you from playing like Soul Ring and other mana rocks or whatever, because you want to ramp into this guy some of the time. But often, this starts life as a 2/2, but often it immediately becomes like an 8/8. Sometimes you do want it to eat your own thing, so it gets larger. So Bane is just a wild magic card, and maybe one of the better ones we'll look at today. I might shock you here, but I am going to give this card a 7.7. I seriously am. I mean, if it was just a sweeper that destroyed all artifacts and enchantments and it costs, I don't know, like 4 mana, that'd be great. But you spend a couple extra mana, you get a huge dude out of it. Yeah, it's good. It's a good body. I like the body on this thing. It's good stuff. So I think this card is fantastic, dude. 7.7. Easy decision. We'll move on to Singer of Swift Rivers from Ixalan, Lost Caverns Commander, really. This is 3 mana, 1 a green and a blue for a 3/2 Merfolk Shaman with Flash. When it enters the battlefield, put a shield counter on another creature you control, and you may cast Merfolk spells as though they had Flash. I was not very whelmed by this card all through reading it. And then I got to that last line of text, and my brain started going like, okay, well, here's the thing. Actually, this might be all right. A bunch of good Merfolk already have Flash, but a bunch don't. Don't you want to cast Lord of Atlantis with Flash after blocks or something and just blow your opponent out with the Anthem effects? Like, that could be fun, So altogether, cool. Probably costs like 1 mana too much. I would take away the shield counter ability. No, I wouldn't, right? Because even though it's 3 mana, this is a body that counters a removal spell and then like has like a global, like a passive ability. And that's, I don't know, that's all pretty good. It's only 11 cents. But altogether, I'm going to give this card, within the context, of course, of Merfolk in Commander, I'm going to give this like a 4.8. I think this is actually pretty good. I think we're getting there. It's all right. So we'll move on to Sarkhan Dragon Ascendant from Tarkir Dragonstorm. Okay, so today is the, I guess, second day of Tarkir Dragonstorm previews, and we've already seen this card. We saw this card like a month ago during a first look preview, but I haven't been able to rate it with numbers, right? I've just like looked at it in the context of a preview video, so it might be fun to rate this with numbers in one of these videos. For again, mostly for casual Commander. This is a wild looking version of this card. This is the Pokemon version of this card. There are Pokemon foils that look exactly like this. This is what this card looks like. 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/2 legendary human druid. When it enters, you may behold a dragon. And if you do, create a treasure token. So it's easy to behold a dragon. Just either choose a dragon you control and point to it. Yeah, there he is. Or you can reveal a dragon from your hand. Right. So you don't even have to have one in play. Whenever a dragon you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on Sarkhan. Till end of turn, Sarkhan becomes a dragon in addition to its other types, and also gets to the flying. So that's pretty good. He gets a counter. So, you behold a dragon, create a treasure on turn 2. Turn 3, resolve a 4 mana dragon ahead of schedule and attack with a 3/3 flyer. I think it's a good start to a game of competitive 60 card, you can play a play set of cards magic, right? But in Commander, still great, still very good, still insane. Dragons are extremely popular in Commander and powerful for what it's worth. I think their power is part of their popularity. So will they slot this card in? Maybe, probably, could be. I think that a 2-drop that makes a treasure and gets larger throughout the game, it seems great to me. So This card is pre-ordering for $10, which might be a little much. Usually pre-orders are, right? But yeah, I would maybe hold off. We'll wait and see on that price. But altogether, this is definitely playable at the very least in Commander Dragons decks. So I'm going to give Sarkhan altogether I'm going to give him like a 5.6. And his competitive playability, I think, does factor in a bit there because in Commander, he's just like, oh ho hum. He's like a wily goblin, you know what I mean? He's like two mana, in this case 2/2, that makes a treasure. Okay. That's not big of a deal, but again, getting the counters, I think, is going to matter a lot. So he might be better than I'm scoring him. He might be a little worse in Cash Commander, but I think this card's going to make waves in a couple of formats. But we'll move on to Bitter Reunion, a card not from the set that's currently being previewed as I record this, but a good card's from Brothers War here. 2 mana, 1 and a red for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. You can also pay 1 and sack it to have creatures you control gain haste till end of turn. So I see this on the arena a lot, but it's hardly ever in like top 8s. It's not a very popular tournament card, and it hasn't been through its entire lifespan. But there's been a lot to do with it while it has been in Standard. Boy, we had, Brilliant Restoration for a while in Standard, which just puts all the artifacts and enchantments into play. That was fun with like artifact creatures and enchantment creatures. Just throw them into play, give them haste, and this will come back from your yard too when you do that. I've built a bunch of decks like that effectively that want to use Bitter Reunion to give a bunch of stuff you just reanimated haste, but also, you put it in your yard, and whatever you're using to reanimate also gets the reunion back, which is nasty. So really, really interesting card here, especially in a sort of, opalescence deck. Those haven't existed since 1998 or whatever. But the real ones know what I'm talking about. Either way, pretty decent magic card, man, as far as like tormenting voice effects go. This is an enchantment, so it's a permanent. You can do all kinds of stuff with permanents. You can return them to your hand and play them again. You can sacrifice them to things that want to sack permanents, and there's a bunch of stuff that wants to sack specifically enchantments in Standard right now. So, Disturbing Mirth and whatnot. Final Vengeance. So just altogether, great effect. It really is. And you can, play it in the early game and drop a reanimator target in the bin, right? While drawing into more stuff, maybe drawing into the reanimator spell itself. Or just get more lands to make sure you can hit it on turn 4. And then on turn 4, maybe reanimate something and have mana left over, maybe, you know what I mean, to give it haste. So just Bitter Reunion, just kind of a fantastic magic card. It really is. I'm going to give Reunion the honorary 5. I don't know if I should score this card a 5 or not, but just in terms of not only design, but like play function, like when you actually get into the real world and play this card, there's so many ways to use it that I don't know. I kind of love it. I kind of love it a little bit, and I'm going to be sad when this rotates. But we'll move on to Warped Devotion from Plane Shift here. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for an enchantment. Whenever a permanent is returned to a player's hand, that player discards a card from his or her hand. Okay, so you can use this in a lot of ways. You can return stuff to your own hand, right, and then discard it for value if that's what you're looking to do, or for madness potential, or whatever, right? There's ways to use this on yourself, but obviously, you play this in a bounce build, you bounce stuff to your opponent's hand to make them discard stuff. And obviously, if they didn't have any cards in their hand, then you just effectively removed the thing that you bounced, and that's good. So cool card that has only been reprinted once in 8th edition, and yet is less than $1/4 to buy right now. I actually think this is a really, really neat magic card with a pretty unique effect. It's not too hard to trigger either, so I kind of want to give this like a 5.1 or something. Am I being wild here? Let me know in the comment section if I'm just being like out of pocket on this one, but I'm going to give it a 5.1. I'm going to do it. I actually think this is a really cool effect that has not been printed enough, and there aren't a whole lot of versions of, so maybe that's why you can't build a whole lot of commander decks around effects like this, is because there's not enough of them. But once it's in play, I could see making this very, very powerful. Seriously, so I like it. I would love to have this in Standard against the This Town Ain't Big Enough decks. That'd be kind of fun. But we'll move on to Fracture here from Strixhaven. Pretty good magic card. 2 mana, Orzhov colors for an instant. Destroy an artifact, an enchantment, or a planeswalker. So it can't hit creatures. That makes it bad. That's really good. A lot of commander decks will play this card just because. It's about $1 now to buy off the list, but if you want the actual version of it from Strixhaven, so you don't get that little like list tag in the bottom left corner. You don't want to. You want to be cool and get the original. It's like $1.50. And there's a reason for that. It's a removal spell that needs to be reprinted a lot more, and you'd think it would have been reprinted in more Commander products by now, but no, amazingly. This is very playable in just about every deck with access to black and white, so I will give this a 6. Right at about. Great removal spell, really, though. Vault of the Archangels up next. God, I love this card so much, man. This is about $1 right now to buy from a couple of different sets, and well, 50 cents from Lost Caverns Commander. That's a heck of a deal, dude. Snatch this up. Another good Orzhov card. A land that taps for a colorless and comes into play untapped. But you can also pay 2, a white and a black, and tap it to have creatures you control gain Death Touch and Lifelink till end of turn. This is in the mana base for Elisil Core, and just about every other Orzhov deck in Commander. It's one of those things where it's like a free roll, you know what I mean? No opportunity cost, really, to play this card unless you have that many white or black mana symbols in your deck, and then maybe you did something wrong. Honestly, I feel like you could take out just a non-land card from the deck and add this, and, you know, not only have you added a spell, an effect to the deck, but you've also added a land. Again, very little opportunity cost in most decks that can play this to actually play it. It doesn't even come into play tap. Just a very good card. It effectively costs 5 mana, really, 5 lands. To use it, but boy, can it be devastating, dude. Like, if you have a bunch of life gain triggers, this card becomes better. Or if you just have a bunch of dinky dudes and don't want to be attacked into, or you want a profitable attack, right? Or maybe you have death triggers, because I've been in this situation a bunch. You have death triggers on your side of the table, and you want to swing in too. You want to get aggressive. So now you can swing, and if your opponent doesn't block, you get a bunch of damage on that end. If they do block, you kill their guys, and you get death triggers. So just a all-around fantastic little land here. I'm going to give Vault a 6.5. Thereabouts. Expensive ability, but it comes in handy all the time, man. It's really, really good. But we'll move on to Island Basics. Get a 5. Haven't seen a basic this week. That's wild. Conspiracy Unraveler from Murders at Karlov Manor. Doesn't that look silly? Doesn't that look so silly? And that's Vance Kelly did a really good job on this art here. I really like this art style right here, but you can't see it. So let's look at how the card's supposed to look. From Wayne Reynolds here. Decent art too. This is 7 mana, 5 and 2 blue for a 6/6 Sphinx Detective with flying. You may collect evidence 10 rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. If you want to collect evidence, you have to exile cards with mana value from your graveyard. So in this case, you exile cards with mana value 10 or greater. That's a lot from your yard. But obviously, the cool thing about this is you can drop really expensive cards in your yard with discard effects, and then, you know, later on, play them for free. Profit. And a lot of times you want to reanimate the Conspiracy Unraveler. So that necessitates a strategy where you're discarding cards anyway. So you can discard Conspiracy Unraveler and a bunch of other cards, maybe extra copies of Conspiracy Unraveler, right? And then collect evidence very easily. And there was a deck in Standard for a while, and it's still theoretically playable, that plays this card and, oh God, what is it called? Like Scene of the Crime or something like that. Forget exactly what it's called, but like if a card went to your graveyard from anywhere this turn, you play the 4 mana card, and you can just play the card that went to your graveyard for free, regardless of casting cost. I don't think I explained that very well, but either way. You play Scene of the Crime, you get your Conspiracy Unraveler, and then you go hog wild. You just go crazy casting free spells and omnisciences and whatever. And that deck has not actually been like super successful the whole time it's been in Standard, but it's one that people try to jam on Arena sometimes. It's a whole lot of fun. And altogether, just, you know, outside of the context of Standard, Unraveler seems fun in Commander, especially if you can break it somehow and like mill yourself a bunch of cards and then get this out. So could be good, but I'm pressed to give it anything over like a 4.8. Pretty high casting cost, and a pretty, honestly, even once you successfully get it into play, you then have to have facilitated it a lot to cast free spells. So is it Omniscience? No, it's not. So we'll move on to Dead Bridge Goliath. We have done the Big Beetle before. I kind of like this little guy. Again, I have a little bit of affinity for this dude. But we'll move on to C double here for March of the Machine. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for an instant that cannot be copied. Choose one. If an opponent has 8 or more cards in their yard, you can get both of these effects. A, copy target spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. B, create a token that's a copy of target creature. So an instant speed clone that can target any creature is a decent baseline, right? But copying a spell is great too. You copy one of your own, you can copy one of your opponents, and not a whole lot of these effects allow you to do that necessarily, right? So a lot of tricksy stuff you can do with a C double, and I imagine that at some point while it's in standard you'll see some play, but it's only got like 6 more months to do that, so we'll see what happens. But this is just an all-around cool Magic card. I don't hate blue, right? Blue does some cool stuff, and this is among the coolest stuff that it can do. So big fan of the design on this card, and I'm actually going to give it like a 6. The tricks that this can do, but it might rot in your hand until it does a trick, but it'll have something to do. At some point in a game of Magic, it will have something to do. But we'll move on to Wall of Fire, baby. This is from the long ago, printed in alpha and all that. 3 mana, 1 and 2 red for a 0/5 wall. You can pay 1 to Fire Breathe. That is the entire card. Doesn't it look cool from alpha though? Do you see why people fell in love with Magic the Gathering in 1993? Is because you'd open up a pack of cards. You'd get like, it's like getting a deck of playing cards. That's exactly, it came with the same little cellophane around it as a pack of playing cards. You had to pull the little tab to open it up, and your cellophane's all crispy. You open it. It smells like something. I don't know. You guys remember the smell of old Magic cards? You open it up, and you get that cellophane undone. You pull out the cards, and they look like this. It's a whole stack of cards that look like this deep red border, this striking black border against all the colors, that brilliant color palette. There's only like 3 or 4 colors in this art, and it's all extremely striking. Amazing, good job, Richard Thomas, with the old school fantasy aesthetic. And even in 93, this was an old school fantasy aesthetic. Just really hits all the bars in terms of what a Magic card is supposed to look like, and they don't look like that anymore. This is why people fell in love. If I'm going to use the Wall of Fire entry wisely, I think this is the best way to do it. Not talking about Wall of Fire, but talking about why people liked Magic in the first place, and why people are like, you know, I think I might be out. You know? So all I'm saying is, there's only so many cards you can do like Wall of Fire. But it's not like anyone ever looked at a Wall of Fire and was like, this is what got me to like Magic. But it's the cumulative effect of all the cards from, I know what I'm trying to say here, and I think I've vocalized it well enough that I don't need to continue like blibbing and blabbing here about it. I think you get what I'm trying to say. I've been impassioned enough about it at the very least. Either way, Wall of Fire is like a 1. It's not all that bluster and build up to say that Wall of Fire is a pretty terrible Magic card. We'll move on to Brotherhood Vertibird from Fallout. See, this is what I'm talking about. All right, so let's F11 here so I can press the back button. I'm sure someone in the comments is going to tell me like, you don't have to go out at full screen. You can press this button. I'm sure I can. Maybe it's backspace. I don't know. We'll find out together. But who cares? So let's look at Brotherhood Vertibird from the Fallout set. Let's do that, and then let's press back on our browser. You see that card? See that Wall of Fire right there? See that Wall of Fire from 1993? Am I being an old man? Am I old manning right now? Am I yelling at clouds? Let's look at Wall of Fire from 93 and the aesthetic. Let's look at the aesthetic. Let's look at this card. Let's look at this card. And then let's look at Brotherhood Vertibird over here. I think you see the point I'm making. 3 mana for a star 4 vehicle with flying with crew 2. Brotherhood Vertibird's power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. There's a bunch of cards like this. So many cards like this. Any deck can play it though. You're not like stuck in blue-white if you want to play this. It crews for relatively little, but most of the creatures that do this don't have to crew to attack. So that's actually a massive downside. And then it does have a set toughness, but at least it's a decent toughness. There's one thing I like about this. It's that I feel like a lot of the creatures we see like this cost 4, and this costs 3. But then again, we just saw Mendicant Core in the last set, and it costs 2, so that kind of blows that argument out of the water. But this is not great, but it's also not terrible. I could see this being in a Commander product, right? And it was. So I guess we'll give this... I'm actually inclined to give this like a 4.1. I am inclined to do that. And I think I will, sure. I've seen worse Magic cards. I've seen so many worse Magic cards. Wall of Fire is the worst Magic card. Meanwhile, This is better than Wall of Fire, but I wish that it wasn't a fighter plane of some kind. That you can be a fighter plane. That's not right. That's not right. I don't like when people say stuff like that because, like, what about the Weatherlight? And, like, you're absolutely right. Like, fighter planes, you could do a fantasy aesthetic, but this is like a, you know what I mean. Either way, that's the final card of the day, everybody. I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Wow, we made it 20 minutes. Was it the stupid rant about how Magic cards used to look? Maybe. Anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.